Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Book and Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And as you can see, I have a guest, and this is Mr. BC Hunter coming to us from, let's see, balmy tropical Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. He is the host of the Wrestling with the 80s podcast. You said you're pretty much just on YouTube only right now, right?
Right now, yeah. And by the way, hello everybody. Thanks for having me on, Steve. Really appreciate you asking me to step in for this episode and wishing Dwayne and nothing but luck with what's going on with him right now. But I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you. But yeah, you're right. It's YouTube only right now. It's Wrestling with the 80s on YouTube. As the name would state, I'm focusing on the 80s, the greatest time to be a wrestling fan, if you ask me.
It really
and
was. I mean, that's
yeah.
when I became a wrestling fan. That's when you became a wrestling fan. I mean, we may be a little biased,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I mean, you go back and look at everything that's happening now. You can almost say it's like a direct derivative of what was happening back then.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny too because I think a lot of us became fans in the 80s because of WWF, whether, good or bad, but it's because it was big and that's what you saw like up here in Canada. That's what we're getting on TV as opposed to the NWA. But now at this age, getting to go back and watch, Mid-South and JCP and World Class and all that stuff, right? And then you watch it from a different perspective. And like just today I saw a clip of on Twitter or on Instagram or something like that. It was a tag match between the Andersons and the Rock and Roll Express, and I had to
Oh,
comment. I'm like,
was that
I just
start?
had to. I had to comment. It was like just Arn Anderson is just so good. So like just the little things that he does, and I love appreciating those things
Was that
now.
was that Starcade '86, the cage match for the titles?
It wasn't a cage match. It was just a
Really?
random match, just a random match with
Oh,
them, which are
it.
always better, right?
Oh man, if you need to go watch if you haven't already, it was
Oh yeah, I have.
Starcade '86. Rock and Roll's defending against the Andersons in a cage.
Yep.
And I actually, I mean, I haven't listened to any of Conrad Thompson's podcasts, except for Arn's, and even that one I haven't listened to in a while. But Arn, they were doing like the Ask Arn Anything, and they were taking questions from anybody back then. Now you actually have to be a member and pay or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I actually asked him about that particular match. And and Arn even said, because I said it's an underrated cage match. People talk about, of course, Magnum and Tully, which
Yep.
understandable because that match is awesome.
Probably
And
the best of the best. Yeah.
definitely. But I asked him about that one. I said, because people overlooked that one for some reason. And I said, because I mean, it was brutal. And you see just how brutal Ole Anderson could be because you're
Yes.
like, he's going to kill somebody. He
Yeah.
really is. And just a great match. So if you haven't had a chance to go watch that one, definitely check it out.
Oh yeah, I mean, both me and Ted have said we think that 1986 might be the greatest year in wrestling. Period. Just, I mean, WWF is they're not glitz and glamour total at that point. They're pretty much peaking at 86, and then the NWA is just on fire. I mean, you think about the
Mm-hmm.
Great American Bash in '86, Flair at his peak, the formation of the Horsemen. Dusty's just on fire. Magnum's still wrestling. Nikita's a heel. I mean, it's just amazing. Like I love just grab like because going on Peacock or whatever and grabbing like WCW like and the what do you call it 605 the World
Oh,
Championship
TBS.
Wrestling
Yeah.
TBS. Yeah, I
Yep.
love just grabbing a random one from '86 and watching Arn and Ole just work a jobber's arm and make him submit
Yes.
just from an arm bar and it you look at it, you go, yeah, I can believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks believe. Meanwhile, I'll watch something today and the guy's doing a 920 flip, and I'm like, man, that doesn't really look like it hurts him. But meanwhile, these guys just wrench on an arm for about 5 minutes, and you're like, please just quit, please just stop the match.
And,
It's
and
it's beautiful.
that's why I like Gunther so much.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Man, because I mean he's got that old school mentality. He doesn't have just one finishing move. I mean, he has, a couple of pinning moves, then he also has his submission moves. So how do you defend? I'll put quotes. How do you defend against that? Because
Yep.
you don't know what's going to come. So it makes it a lot more credible when you have somebody like that. And he looks kind of like a gym teacher, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I go back to the I said it a million times when doing Wrestling with the Truth with Jay, and I'd say like we were talking about the evolution of wrestling. He I get it. Jay has the opinion of like it's an evolution, and then because my complaint would be like the overuse of the super kick or people kicking out of the stunner or something like that. He's like, well, the super kicks become like a headlock now, right? And I
Right.
said, honestly, though, the right person could make a headlock a finishing maneuver. And Gunther's the proof of that. I guarantee if
Yeah.
Gunther started using a headlock for a finish maneuver, everybody would like, oh my God, that's the most vicious headlock I've ever seen in my life, right? Because he's believable. That's all it takes. He's believable.
Well, I mean, look at Magnum. His finishing move was a belly to belly suplex.
Yep.
And now Bailey, she's got hers, the Bailey to belly or belly to Bailey.
Bailey to
Which,
belly. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, so hers, I mean, she does, and she looks pretty powerful when she does it. I mean,
Yep.
nobody could do it as powerful as Magnum. I will say
Yep.
that just because of the way he did it. You're like, oh, that looks like it
He's
hurt.
he snapped it over and then drove them down,
Boom.
which yeah. But Bailey does a
Exactly.
good job of it. She does. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The only other wrestler I saw use it for a finishing move, and he didn't do it all the time, was actually the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez. He would do it
Yep.
periodically.
Mm-hmm.
And his didn't look like Magnum's. It wasn't as smooth, but it still looked good. I mean, it looked like, oh yeah, that was believable. He just hurt that dude.
Well, I mean, another example, like Brock Lesnar. Like, how many people would have thought the German suplex would be so vicious? But you have Lesnar doing it.
well,
It's all about the aura, right?
I mean, he's throwing him like 40 foot down down the
Yeah,
way too. So I
yeah.
mean, that's
But
um,
it's like, say if you had a guy like Mark Henry, if Mark Henry was
ooh,
using a chin lock for a finisher, I guarantee you'd be going, I believe that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and calling him the world's strongest man, that was not just a gimmick. I mean, at one
right,
point he was in the record book the world's strongest man,
right.
and nice guy, thank God. I've actually seen him a couple times at like some fan fests. I mean, and you think he looks big on TV, you want to see him in person. I mean, that dude is just so massive.
Right.
And but speaking of Brock Lesnar, that's going to kind of nice segue into our news because Brock Lesnar is fitting into and what's wild. I was just telling you this before we started the show. Last Thursday, when I recorded with Justin from TNC Sports Talk and Rescue Randy, who's a good friend of mine. He's the one who actually originally introduced me to the Northern Wrestling Federation, and he's a huge wrestling fan. And we were talking about it. It was in the morning, and then as the day went by, all of a sudden we're hearing news. Vince McMahon is being hit with another lawsuit. And then you're reading all the details, which I will not read because this is a family friendly show and some of the stuff grossed me out. And I'm 50. I'm
Yeah.
50 and I was in the military for 20 years where nothing will, after you're doing that for something, nothing really grosses you out anymore because you've seen some stuff. And even that, I was going, ooh. And my son, who has not read the details, I hope not. And he even asked me, he said, is this like a Harvey Weinstein situation? I'm like, you know what? I said, Harvey Weinstein would look at Vince McMahon and say, dude, you're a freak.
Mm.
And I mean, so it's bad. And now Vince has finally resigned for good. There was no McMahon, anybody with the last name McMahon anyway. Paul Levesque, Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he's still technically part of that family, but I don't want to see him go because I think him in charge of the creative has been a good thing. But unfortunately, the fallout, he might actually have to step down as well. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, and I'll preface this by saying, one, I don't know how many different podcasts I've listened to this week since this story broke, and everybody's covering it, right? Everybody's got
Right.
an opinion. Everybody's made the final judgment on things too. I'll say that as well. And so I'll preface it by saying, like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge. I wasn't there. So I'm not going to sit here and say 100% everything is cut and dried and closed and all that stuff. So I'm a firm believer in, okay, let's hear the whole story here. Let's go to court and find out what's going on. If everything that brought up in this whole situation is true, it's horrible.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely horrible. Even if 10% of it's true, it's horrible. It's a real blight on the McMahon name and the McMahon legacy. But we'll go into that, I'm sure, here in a moment. But going back to Triple H, um, I find it, if all this is true, I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be in the know of what his father-in-law is doing.
Right.
So that's a difficult situation right there. I've got to separate myself from my love of the wrestling product and the actual legal ramifications of things. That's the other problem there. I do, and I think we talked about this a little bit off the air, some of the ridiculousness that we do see on social media and stuff like that, like the people that were going bananas about his response at the press conference. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you expect? He's not going to say anything about that matter because this is actually, as when people compare it to the Tony Khan situation, that wasn't a court case going on.
Right. That,
This is
that's
a this is
that's
a
totally
legal
different.
matter. If he says one word about it, it's going to be brought into the record, right? So
Hmm.
he can't say anything. Now, what I will agree with, I think it was Dave Meltzer that said this. He probably should have had just an opening statement and just said, "Listen, guys, I know what you want to ask me about, and in a perfect world, I'd be able to field some questions for you. But you realize this is he kind of went there when he said it, like, you know what I'm going to say to you back to that first question, but he should have did a statement and say, I for legal sake, and this is not just protection of WWE, but this is protection of the person that's filed the claim against Vince McMahon. I can't say anything about this
Right.
matter. So this is something that you're going to have to take to TKO. You're going to have to take it to our legal department and let them field questions on that. So aside from that, let's just concentrate on the Royal Rumble and I'll answer whatever questions you want about that. I think that probably would have been a better way for him to do it because it just came off as evasive, but in the end, he wasn't going to say anything. I mean, if you're going there as
Right.
a reporter thinking you're going to get a gotcha on him, I mean, this is a publicly traded company with some of the best lawyers in the world that work for them. They know how to handle these situations. But yeah, a written statement probably would have been great. I've heard people say cancel the press conference, but I don't think you do that. I mean,
No,
I
that's
mean,
it's their one of their biggest shows of the year. You can't
yeah,
cancel a press conference about because of something that had nothing to do with the show.
yeah. So I mean, I think one of the bright spots about it, though, and I mentioned this on Twitter, is that um, Cody Rhodes coming out of that, he just showed once again why, forget all this story about Seth and forget all the story about The Rock and all this stuff. He's going to finish his story and he's going to do, and sorry, he's not going to finish the story. He's going to complete that segment of the story because the story's never finished in wrestling. But he's going to be the guy because they need to clean house and get a fresh coat of paint on. And he proved in the way he handled the question that he's the guy that's the going to be the face of the WWE, and he's going to be the guy that's able to make the right answer to every question, all that kind of stuff, right? Like a Bret Hart. He'll be like a Bret Hart, represent the company and do it well. And so I think he gained a lot of points at that conference. Triple H, I honestly, deep in my heart, I hope none of it's true. And not just because I'm a wrestling fan, but you don't want to hear about somebody going through that. I mean, God,
Exactly.
that's horrible. That's horrible stuff. So nobody wants to anybody in this world to go through such horrible or disgusting behavior. But in the end, I just really hope that he's not part of this. He's not in the know because I agree that they have to clean house and get anybody who's associated with that out of there and
Right.
start fresh. Like I know people are saying, "Oh, that's the end of WWE and stuff like that." No, it's not. I mean, there's been
No.
lots of scandals in lots of different sports, and the sports have moved on. They've gone bigger and they've gotten better and stuff like that. And this the same will happen with WWE. But just being a personal fan of Triple H over the years, I really and knowing what that this, I'm glad to see this is finally happening for him because when they were talking about him taking over years ago, I'm thinking, oh my God, if that guy gets a hold of the book, he's such an old school guy. He's going to do
Yeah, yes.
fantastic with it, right? So yeah, sorry, long-winded answer, but
No, you're fine.
um, all I gotta say is they got a clean house on whoever's in the know involved, and I think they kind of did. I don't think it's the timing's suspicious with Kevin Dunn leaving when he did, right?
Right, because Kevin Dunn, well, I want to be with Vince, but then that was before the lawsuit, but I think Kevin Dunn may have actually known it was coming down the pike there. And of course it's also Brock Lesnar, as we mentioned before. Now Brock Lesnar was actually, I don't think he was pulled off the Rumble because apparently he was supposed to be in the Rumble. But now, I mean, but he may have pulled himself out of that match. Not only that, the Royal Rumble, but also Elimination Chamber next month in Perth in Australia. And so Brock Lesnar is not going to be involved in either one of the. Well, obviously the Rumble's already passed, so he was not part of that. But apparently he's also pulled himself off the Elimination Chamber. And for now, I mean, he could always end up going back in it, but right now, I because I can't see the fans necessarily cheering him with all the accusations that have been coming out. So if I was him, do the smart thing, lay low explain to your wife about, what's going on. Now John Laurinaitis, or as Dwaylen started naming him, and I can't help but naming two clown shoes.
Mhm.
Um, now his wife apparently, the Bella twins mom, she actually put out her own statement saying, she's, she was caught totally surprised by all these accusations, and and they're going to try to work through whatever it is, so I mean, so this is not just affecting, when we think about, well, just Vince McMahon. Well, Vince McMahon has, him and his wife have been separated apparently for years. That just now came out, but it's affecting his daughter. It's affecting his son. It's affecting his grandkids. He has a grandson who's playing football at the University of Indiana. I can't imagine what that kid's going through in the locker room, because somebody, and it's not going to be a lot of people, but it might be one or two people that are just going to be, messing with him. And I'm pretty sure he's already stressed out as it is, um, and then they're just going to egg it on. And, so everybody's going through that, including, Laurinaitis' family, which Laurinaitis, I mean, I'm not a fan of his anyway, because think about how he met his wife was he was recruiting the two Bella twins because he thought they were hot. And now he's married to their mom. I'm like, well, do you still think your stepdaughters are hot? So I mean, I think Laurinaitis, I think my personal opinion is he's kind of piggish to begin with, but yeah, but we'll have to see. I mean, and Slim Jim actually pulled their sponsorship, but as soon as Vince resigned, they reinstated it, for the Rumble.
Yeah, did we ever get official confirmation that they did pull the sponsorship? Because I saw a lot of dirt sheets saying that they rumor was that they pulled it, but for them to bring it back that quick is kind of surprising to me. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know, like I don't know if they pulled it or what, or they threatened to pull it, but because they're all in on the Rumble, and I mean, for a company that's willing to pull something that quick to be that blatant about their advertising,
Right.
yeah, I know they got rid of McMahon, but still, I mean, he's still associated with this product, and there's still a
He
stink over the product, right?
Vince McMahon will always be associated with WWE and then wrestling as a whole, just because Vince McMahon is the one who built wrestling to be as big as what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I know the history of it, and if it wasn't for Vince McMahon, we wouldn't. It would not be a worldwide product.
Mhm.
I mean, America and Canada. I mean, if you read the magazines, like we've discussed that before, and you even discussed it on your latest video, where I will bring that up, where you interviewed the two gentlemen who just wrote the book about Andre the Giant, and I'm
Mhm.
about 2/3 of the way through that video, and it's very. I was having fun to watch that. I was watching it, and all of a sudden I realized what time it was. Like, oh crap, I need to send BC the link so we can get on here, and but they were actually talking about, and you had mentioned that you weren't able to, I think you mentioned before here, but you weren't able to watch like the NWA and things like that in Mid South, and which later become UWF. You were really
Mhm.
focused on the Canadian wrestling. And just
Mhm.
like me, I was watching what Jim Crockett, Mid Atlantic,
Yeah.
like this title right here. I just have to
Yeah.
show that. So, um, but once I got the magazines, all of a sudden it's like, there's wrestling in Canada? That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, but now, you still have obviously local promotions, indie promotions, and but they don't have like the territories like they used to, and and that's all because of it's a man, for better for worse. I mean, whether you like it or not, but I mean, he's the one who made it as big as what it is now, and it's just it's a crying shame that it may crumble, to nothing. I mean, because it takes how many, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it can be destroyed within a matter of hours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, um, a lot of people talk about the McMahon name, and it's going to be erased from history because of the stain and stuff like that. You're right. You cannot erase it. It's like no different than like I talk about Chris Benoit is another example, right? They can try to erase Chris Benoit's name and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to erase it. My God, I just uh, last week watched WrestleMania 20, and and the Rumble prior to that, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to feel bad because I was a Chris Benoit fan before he went and did what he did. Right?
Bingo.
I'm not a fan of him for doing what he did, but I can't change the memories that I had when he was wrestling and he wasn't this psychopath. You know what I mean? And the same thing
Right.
with McMahon. And I think 99.9% of the wrestling fans out there, when they talk about Vince McMahon, it's not like we put him up on a pedestal in the first place as this glowing bastion of humanity. We've all said like the guy's a weirdo. He's
Yeah,
he's done some really crappy things to a lot of people, but he did, for good or for bad, he did change the wrestling business altogether. For bad, I'd say he killed a lot of promoters' territories, but for
yep,
good, he turned this into a worldwide phenomenon that nobody else would have done. It would have, and when you see Netflix spending $5 billion on wrestling, that's because of what Vince McMahon did with his vision. You know how he got there, not necessarily the best, but it's kind of like the mafia, right?
right,
It's the same idea, but I don't think he necessarily had the most clean legacy prior to this. Now it's just been absolutely destroyed, and unfortunately, I think his whole family's legacy is destroyed by this. I don't think anybody's going to get away with. I don't think anybody's going to be able to say, well, that Vince, what a scoundrel he was, but that Stephanie's okay. I think it's going to be a McMahon thing, right? And it's unfortunate. And you're right. I feel bad for the grandkids and the kids and all this stuff who now have to go through. It's no different than David Benoit.
exactly.
What's he done except survived, right? And meanwhile he can't go through life without that legacy associated with his name. I mean, he could, be Mother Teresa, and it's still people are gonna associate that. So it's unfortunate how this goes, but the wrestling industry is still gonna keep going forward. It's just this is a it's just I'm trying to compare. I'm trying to think of another comparison in sports where it'd be something similar, where somebody takes
Uh,
such a
OJ.
yeah, I guess OJ. Yeah,
You know
that's a
that's
good.
that. Honestly, I was thinking that a while ago. I was like, well, who else? OJ Simpson, because
I
people forget OJ Simpson was a phenomenal running back. I mean, he was like he was crazy out in the field. I mean, he at one point he held the single season rushing record before
yeah,
Eric Dickerson broke it. By the way, Eric
yeah,
Dickerson's record is still there, even though now they're playing three more games. His record
yeah.
is still standing. But OJ, I mean, he will never be remembered as this great running back. He's always
I
going to
mean,
be remembered for the other stuff.
yeah, I know. And so, and here's the irony: I'm a Bills fan too. So, I'm batting two for two for organizations that I'm supporting here. But yeah, but no, but the NFL's still going. The Buffalo Bills are still going. We still love sports. We all
Hmm.
this stuff, right? We just have this guy that's tainted, and it's no different. So technically, I'll put the quotation marks out there. OJ got called innocent originally, right?
Right,
Because of the original trial, right? Technically, I'll put this right. The civil trial was a little bit different.
right.
Um, Vince McMahon could end up at the end of this. They may find a way to in court, um, quote unquote, prove that he didn't do some of the things he did and get away with this. But this taint's still going to be on no different than an OJ
Oh,
Simpson. So
absolutely.
that's a great example actually to compare it with, right? It's I was thinking first thought came into my mind was Pete Rose, but it's not even
You know what?
close to
And
that.
I
Yeah.
was even thinking Pete Rose just now. I mean, I didn't grow up in Cincinnati, so
Hmm.
I don't I'm not one of the many people around here. By the way, it's also a divisive subject too. And I'm not going to state my opinion about Pete Rose, but you go to the Great American Ballpark, which I've been to a lot of Reds games. I mean, and I will support the Reds to win,
Hmm.
just because I live here, and it's better if they win because it's actually better for the local economy if they're doing good.
Hmm.
But you go to the Great American Ballpark, I mean, they actually have a statue that looks like Pete Rose is sliding head first. So the people around here, they still love him. Now, he has a lot of accusations, not just the gambling, but he's got other things too. And I actually worked with a lady um, where the job that I left back last May, but and she actually knew Pete Rose.
Right.
Like her brother apparently was living with or engaged to or married to Pete Rose's ex-wife. And her grandson and Pete Rose's son were friends and they played baseball together. So she had actually met him, quite a few times. And, but I mean, of course, she has her own opinions. I mean, but yeah, he's also another he's not as divisive. I mean, there is some division here. Not, I mean, it's not 50-50, obviously. It's more like probably like a 75-25, just from what I've, 75 people say, no, they need to put him in the Hall of Fame. And then, there was like, well, he also did other stuff, but people, now that one actually, Pete Rose, they always say, well, he's still the number one hit leader in Major League Baseball,
Yeah.
and there, I mean, and he did a lot more stuff in baseball besides that. I mean, Pete Rose was a phenomenal player, but they don't, because of the way he was ousted from baseball, and then it just kept going and kept going and kept going. But he is in the WWE Hall of Fame though, so he's got that going on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even Pete Rose, he still gets a little bit of sympathy from the public. OJ
Yes,
will never. Now
never.
you can say OJ's innocent 40 times in a court of law, and people are going to still associate him with that. Same with Vince McMahon. He could be exonerated
Hmm.
from this, and this taint's still going to be on him. It's going to be on the McMahon family. It's going to, it'll go even back to his father. Like because it'll
Yep.
be like, oh well, they must have did something in his raising that caused him to be this way. So it's just unfortunate. Like just all of it is unfortunate that's gone on. Like just everybody involved. And I really do hope that in the end, it turns out that this isn't what actually happened, because I don't want to think of somebody having to go through stuff like that either.
Right.
Right. So, and I mean, then there's lots of questions that you could be asked on the other side, which that's what a court of law is for too. Right. Cause like, the thing, and I think I listened to Jim Cornette's. Um, I know he got a lot of heat for his initial reaction to this, but it was literally a live reaction. They read
Yeah,
the
it
Wall Street
was.
Journal, and so
Yep.
they're like, "Nah, this is crazy," and kind of laughed about it. But now they did on YouTube today. It was a clip from the latest episode, and they're really diving deep into this now. And I mean, they're not making fun of it, but they asked a lot of the same things that I asked, at the same time, saying, "Well, it's you like you gotta believe the person that's making the accusation, but it's just so hard to fathom that this person who's like a psychopath about cleanliness is doing this other thing that they're talking about, or somebody
You know
who's,
what? I didn't even think about that.
yeah, like it just
So,
all these different things that just they don't like when I'm reading the text that was supposedly there, I'm like, when did Vince McMahon start texting like a 14-year-old boy, like with some of the abbreviations he's using and things like this? Just you can't. I'm talking like I remember saying to my wife, like this is a guy that they've told stories about, like this computer. I got a corner of a laptop showing up in this picture. If that showed up during a live promo, he would lose his mind
hmm.
because somebody didn't notice that. That's how much of a control freak. But then it goes back to say, well, maybe this is part of the control freak thing and stuff like that. So I don't know, but I thought Cornette and Last did a good job of just saying, like, I mean, they're obviously damning him for what happened, but they're also like, I just cannot fathom that this person who you hear so much, and I mean, Cornette has intimate relationships with him as far as he
Yeah.
worked for the guy and was in the writer's room with him and stuff like this. So, I mean, he knows from personal experience. He's like, I mean, I've this guy like hates sneezing and he's a clean freak and a germ phobe and these things. And then you're reading this stuff, you're like, this does not match up to this person. And they brought up a point too, and it's not an excuse, but something I was wondering about too, like, because even before all this happened, I mean, we've seen over the last few years, Vince McMahon is not the Vince McMahon that you're used to seeing on TV.
Mm-mm.
He's in, and I even thought, like, did he have cancer or something? Has he starting to have issues with dementia or something? And they brought up the point, like, how does he just go off the rails like this? And it just happened in the last few years that this relationship struck up. And it's like, is this like CTE from all the stupid chair shots he did? Because again, in the 90s, when he started getting in the ring, trying to be a tough guy, he's taking those unprotected headshots with chairs and
Yep.
stuff like that. And they're like, I don't know, like they're not saying he's innocent of this stuff, but they're like, where does this, like, how do you match up this person that was just this just absolute freak when it comes to one things to the freak you're hearing about now, right? So it's just I don't know. There's so many. There's That's why I don't even want to make a judgment on all this because there's so much more to come out, and it's scary to think that this is what they say $1 million he paid out. There's
Yes.
still
It was a initial $1 million. He was supposed to pay out more,
yeah
and then he just stopped paying. Which I
Yeah.
did. I also listened to the Cornette's initial reaction. Like you said, I mean,
Hmm.
it was live.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
live,
brand
live.
new,
Yeah. Hmm.
and he said that apparently McMahon is notorious for he's supposed to make payments to somebody and he'll make it for a little bit, then just stop for
Yes.
no reason.
He
And
did to Stu Hart.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the people he did that to when he bought
Yeah.
Stampede. So,
Yeah. But yeah, it was
oh,
but there's still $12 billion worth of payments out there, and who the heck and what the heck happened there too, right? And then they brought up a great point too, going back to that whole Rita Chatterton case, the referee from the 80s that
right,
accused him of well,
assault.
yeah, it's a family friendly
Yeah,
show. So yeah, her accusations very closely mimic what's going on here. So I don't know. I mean, it's no different than the serial killer that the neighbor goes, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I lived next to him for 30 years. He was never like this, right?
mm,
Same thing, right?
right. Except for a Canadian serial killer named Robert Picton. I think everybody nobody was surprised at him,
Yeah.
the pig farmer. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But
like yeah, he was killing them, feeding them to pigs.
but
Well,
yeah.
but
But the bigger question and the bigger story that could end up being of this, yeah, okay, so you got this one psychopath, but how many people hid what was going on too? That's the other scary part.
exactly, and I think a lot of that's going to come out. I'm not going to make any accusations, but I mean, we all know those who really follow this, sort of podcasters especially. I mean, we dive a little bit deeper than the average fan as far as like the executives. Some of which have already been named, some of which they're already speculating are they involved,
Hmm.
and so I don't want to throw all these names out there yet because I don't want to be part of that rumor mill. Because once you say a name, that could be part of it. Somebody's going to run with it and say, "Oh, on that podcast, they said he or she is part of it." And no,
Yes.
we're not doing that. So,
No.
uh, but but either way, some of that did kind of affect the Rumble a little bit because, like I said, Brock Lesnar was supposed to be in the men's Rumble. He wasn't there. I don't know about any of the other ones how it could have affected, but the Rumble. What was your overall impression of the Rumble as a whole?
Um, Overall, just taking everything out of it, I enjoyed the Rumble. Honestly, I enjoyed the women's match a little bit more than the men's match.
Yep, same here.
I find it very difficult to watch modern wrestling now because it's hard not to be on social media and all you ever hear about is just the negatives, the negatives, the negatives. So, for instance, the crowd, even when I'm watching, like, God, the crowd sounds quiet. This is weird, but I'm looking at the crowd. They look like they're cheering for stuff. And just so happens, I don't know. Do you know Will and Taylor from Jaded Wrestling?
I have listened to it before. I need to actually put it on like my normal rotation as far as podcasts go because I mean I listen to quite a few podcasts. They're not all wrestling though.
Yeah.
But say I need to actually add that one on there as well.
Yeah, no worries. Well, they're friends of ours, and
Right.
they were there at the. So
Really?
I
Oh,
messaged
that's
them.
awesome.
I was like, was the crowd really that dead? Like it really came off dead on TV. Were they that quiet? And he's like, no, it was an awesome awesome event. They're like it was a good atmosphere in the crowd, right? So I'm like, okay, so they obviously did a poor job of miking the crowd for that because it just sounded dead at points there, right? So take that away. But of course, everybody's just jumping all over. Oh, the crowd was terrible and stuff like that. And then everybody's complaining about the lack of surprises and so didn't show up. But WWF never, or WWF, WWE never hinted around to these people showing up. So like, why are you getting mad because so and so didn't show up? Like Sasha Banks didn't show up, Okada didn't show up, all these different people. It's like, but they never said they were going to show up and they never even hinted around.
Right.
So why, like you got Andrade? That wasn't a big surprise because you heard rumors
We
of it,
knew he had just left AEW,
but
so
still, like it's still somebody different that's in there. Braun Breaker, I thought was fantastic in there. I
yeah, he
love that.
was.
It's supposedly, and again, rumor and conjecture that he took the Brock Lesnar spot. Well, he did fantastic. I thought that was a great. That's when I really started to question about the miking of the crowd because there was no way that the way he came into that Rumble that the crowd didn't react to that, right? And he cleaned house for a little while, and that was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, there wasn't a ton of surprises. I actually thought Punk was going to win. I think I told you that in my predictions there. And rumor has it again that maybe they had to pull the shoot on Cody because of Punk getting hurt in the Rumble that he was
Right.
supposedly going to win. So that's interesting. But overall, I thought the Rumble was fine. Cody winning was a bit of a surprise, but it moves along the story. And I actually kind of in the afterwards, I thought, you know what, I kind of like that because um if he didn't win the Rumble, he was going to win the Chamber to get that match, right? And they're just adding
Yep.
more onto his story. But I kind of like, you know what, we can take a little breather for now and really build up to this match, right? Um, and then the women's rumble, I like the surprises in that one. Like Jordan Grace, that was a fantastic surprise, and she did amazing in the match itself. And then Jay Cargill and just different people. And another thing I liked about it this year, they didn't rely on these veteran surprises, you know. So it
Thank
was,
yes, I didn't even think about that, but
yeah,
thankfully, because that's one. I mean, it's not that I had a complaint about it, but anytime they actually had, okay, let's bring Lita back, let's bring Trish back, let's bring. Problem is, you have other women on the roster. Is that because I know when they first started the Women's Royal Rumble, they didn't have as many women on the roster, and so they may have needed that just basically for padding, for filler, just to make
hmm,
sure they had enough. Now, they don't need that. Now they
yeah,
actually have a nice women's roster, and they have the women on NXT, and sometimes this is a good time for them to come in, and and because Naomi, when she came back, I was like, that was something I had not even seen. I had actually seen the rumors about Jordan Grace, her coming in, but I was like, okay, we'll see. It'd be kind of cool if she does, and she did, like you said, she did great. And um, when the one that question I have about Naomi, she had Nadine kind of sprayed in her hair, and I was like, well, okay, what does Nadine mean? And I was trying to Google and trying to figure out what that meant, but I never could find it. I actually meant to text Waylon and ask him if he knows what that means too. But I was glad to see her back. Glad to see Natalia. Natalia always does good. I know she's been jobber to the stars lately, but she always does good. And in the women's rumble, yeah, you're right. I mean, I thought it was the match of the night, and I think all the people predicting, uh, the majority of people actually had Bayley picked to win, and I think part of it's because, and I told somebody I was like, I think it's a sign that we know too much about what goes on in wrestling because Bayley winning made sense to push a damage control breaking up or her breaking away from damage control. And Becky Lynch and Rhea, they don't need the Rumble. They're going to have their match anyway. So
hmm,
they didn't need the Rumble to set it up, But Bayley, it makes sense. It goes to the storyline. It's like, so that's when it goes back to the old Sting got the world title shot against Flair when Sting was part of the Horsemen for 5 minutes.
or
And that's,
Batista with Evolution, right?
yes, yes.
Hmm,
Didn't even think about that one. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. And so I like Bayley winning. And, and Sasha, I mean, they have Sasha rumored to come back like every other week.
hmm,
And until she actually comes out and says it, or until she shows up, I'm not going to hold my breath. I don't
yeah,
honestly, I don't think when she does come back, it's not going to be for a while.
yeah,
You know, um, Naomi coming back, well, her husband is still in WWE.
yep,
So to me, Andrade, his wife, is still in WWE. That makes sense. Now I'm just waiting for Malachi Alistair Black to come
hmm,
back as well because his wife is still in WWE.
yeah. I mean, I mean, we could sit here and predict anybody coming back to WWE or going to AEW, and eventually we're going to be right, you
Yeah.
know. But like all these dirt sheets are, well, Sasha's going to debut this, and she's going to debut this week or this week, and it's like, well, you just keep printing that, but you're not really giving. You're just going with conjecture, and I mean, we could say the exact same thing. So, I will say this about the Bailey win. Yeah, I predicted that too. But I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing. I mean, shows that WWE is actually doing a good job of progressing a storyline where
Yes.
the crowd sees where it's going as opposed to being disappointed when it happens. Like when Roman Reigns was winning all these rumbles and going to Mania and stuff like that, people were like, "Oh God, not again!" I knew that was going to happen. People aren't saying I knew it was going to happen with Bailey. They actually are happy because they're getting the payoff to a storyline in that
Yes.
situation, right? And the fact that we had that same story with Batista is not lost on me when the guy booking this stuff is
Oh,
Triple H, right?
yep.
You know,
Yep.
so he knows what he's doing, and this is the story we want to see. Everybody wants Bailey to turn babyface again. I mean, it's Bailey, right?
Right.
And it's a great story. This whole damage control thing is a great story, and I honestly like. I'm not playing the prediction game here. I just have this feeling that it is going to happen. She's going to be fighting Io at WrestleMania, and I think eventually she's going to need a friend to help her out in that feud. And I feel like that's going to be Sasha Banks. And
That, yes, you know what? That would make sense.
yeah, and I mean, I know like the rumors she's going to AEW, whatever. If she goes there, I'm not going to be mad or anything like that. I honestly, I just, I'm almost tired of people going to AEW. I mean, I love the fact I saw Dolph Ziggler on TNA. That's fantastic. I love the fact Jordan Grace showed up in a WWE ring. I'd like to see a few more people go to TNA. Let's make it really competitive amongst a bunch of people. Let's have somebody go to the NWA. Let's have somebody go to MLW, whatever. Like, make it spicy. Like, do you want to go to AEW and be the 48th surprise debut there, or do you want to go to TNA and be the wow? I cannot believe this, and now they just legitimize TNA with that showing up there, right? So those are the things that I look at, but I just feel like there's a storyline going on. From years of watching this, I feel like I have a pretty good feel for these things, and I feel like there's storyline going on that Bailey's going to need help, and it's going to be another old friend of hers, and I feel like it's going to be Sasha. So yeah,
And that, yeah, and Bailey, I think, like you said, a lot of people are happy to see Bailey win, even if they didn't have this whole thing with damage control going on. I still would have been happy to see Bailey win because ever since she turned heel, she hasn't been as good as or as successful, I should say, as what she was when she was a babyface doing. Now the hugger gimmick, hugger gimmick is kind of a little
I don't
saccharine. It's
want
a
to see her
little
go back to that. Don't
right.
go
It's
back to
it's
that.
it's
Yeah.
too bubblegum. All right,
Mhm.
she destroyed the Bailey buddies with the pickaxe. Okay. But at the same time, she's good. She's
She
very good,
is.
and
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
she deserved this win. I mean, and I'm not saying that a good chunk of the women in the room, other women in the Rumble, didn't necessarily deserve it, but she, that's why I predicted it, and I think that's probably why you predicted it, Bailey. It makes sense, and
And it adds drama to the TV. Like we're going to have that story of her being turned on by damage control, and
yeah, we've
and I
seen
love
it
it.
coming. It's got that slow burn going to it. We've seen it coming for a while, and we're just waiting. We're waiting because we know if it doesn't happen, then we might be disappointed. But
Yes.
but we know it's coming, and we still enjoy it.
Yes. It's no different than Sami Zayn turning on the bloodline. You knew it
Yes,
was coming. You knew it was coming for a year, but you were still so invested in that story and enjoying that whole story that when it finally happened, it was actually a payoff where you're like, yes, like, and this, and plus it helped people finally understand Roman's character and stuff like that too. So yeah, we're seeing some good writing and storylines going on now, which is nice, which is again going back to our whole point about Triple H. I really do hope that they get these things sorted out, and that he still continues to be able to do that, because we're seeing some good progressive storylines, and I'm really enjoying that stuff.
also we had finally Jade Cargill. Finally, she's only been in WWE for what, 3 months now, and she
Yeah.
finally had a match in the Rumble.
Hmm.
And I didn't, I thought she did pretty good. I didn't realize. I knew Jade Cargill. I mean, I knew she was pretty fit. I didn't realize how powerful she was until she
Oh
was
yeah.
actually, yeah. When she looked like Cesaro when he threw Big Show out of the ring in that one WrestleMania. In fact, I think it was actually WrestleMania 14 when the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle. He picked Big Show up like he was nothing and just tossed him out. Well, Jade kind of did the same thing with Nia Jax. Just whoop, there you go. Thanks for
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
And and I know I've kind of read. I think some people don't really care for Jade Cargill, but she's legit. I mean, you look at her, she definitely takes care of herself and she puts forth the effort. She doesn't have to. She actually said that on an interview with Chris Jericho. She doesn't have to do that, because she and her husband has lots of money from when he was playing baseball. And I guess he actually did good with his money. He didn't go blow it on everything. And and she has a degree. She could actually do other ventures if she wants. Apparently, she has like a degree in psychology, and that's not that's a field that you can go into and actually make really good money. But she chose wrestling. I mean, she works at it, I mean, and I know she may be actually a little arrogant, but she works towards it. She doesn't say, "Hey, I'm great, I'm better, I'm great," and then just doesn't try to make herself great. She tries to make herself better all the time. She's always trying to improve herself, and so that, I mean, my hat's off to her there. Now some of the other ones in the Rumble, I will say this: I thought the Women's Rumble was good. There was a few sloppy spots.
Oh
Maxine,
yes, yeah,
or yeah, Maxine Dupree. She was the one. I was like, oh, I don't know what they were going for there, but yeah, don't try it again. Oh no,
yeah.
see,
Hmm.
just y'all need to figure out, how to call audibles and how to improvise. But other than that, I mean, our truth, we've always said he's a national treasure. Actually, if
Yeah,
it's America and Canada, he's an international treasure.
yeah,
Our truth, he's just awesome no matter what he does. I mean, because I'm 50, he's older now, he's like 51
yeah,
and looks fantastic.
yeah.
I mean, and he's still carrying on. I mean, he knows he's not going to be in the world title picture again. He's a former world champion. He held that belt back there.
Hmm.
And if I ever meet him, I'm gonna bring that belt and have him sign it along with the other four autographs that are already on it. And when he came running down, I was like, oh no, he's going to get in the women's rumble. And he was staring at I have a hard time calling her Valhalla,
Yeah.
but Sarah Logan, who they are burying right now. I wish that they would not bury her because she's good in the ring. And I don't like what they're doing with that. But he came in, got thrown out. He's the second time he's been thrown out of a battle royal or Royal Rumble by Nia Jax. He got tossed out, and he's like, "Oh, this is the women's rumble." Whoop, there he goes. He's out. And then Sarah Logan Holla, she comes in and immediately 3 seconds later, 5 seconds later, she's out. And to me, they're burying her for no reason whatsoever. And I'm like, I wish they would you know, kind of push her a little bit more, but she's part of a faction that right now is missing a person because it's actually her husband. He's
Hmm.
injured right now. So I mean, because I like the Viking Raiders characters. You
Hmm.
know, um, Ivar. I mean, he had a great match against Chad Noble a couple weeks ago. I mean, it
Uh,
was
Chad Gable.
Chad
Yeah,
Gable.
yeah.
Sorry, Chad Noble is a friend of mine here locally. He's also a big wrestling fan, and he was fairly recently on a true crime TV show for a totally
Ah.
different reason. I have to tell you about at some time.
Hmm.
But um, but yeah, Chad Gable and great man. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. I'm pretty sure
Oh
you
yeah,
did. Oh yeah, that
yeah,
I mean that was
yeah.
a
That's a great match.
oh yeah,
Actually,
and
his match against Bronson Reed too was great.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, big man slapping man meat or
Yes,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Is it Simon Whistler? Is that what he says?
Hmm.
And so I like the women's rumble. I was like, man, how do you top, that? So I was hoping all the other matches, were going to be as good, but I mean, they've raised the bar pretty high. So I mean, I don't think there was any way the other ones could catch it. Um, the 4-way match
Can
for
I just
the,
just before you go
oh, go
into the
ahead.
four way, yeah? Can I just touch on something with
Yeah.
that you were saying about the Rumble? So yeah, Jade Cargill. Yeah, it's been a while. We've been waiting for her to debut. I was okay with it. I'm like, you know what? I know why she's not debuting because they showed like she's working with Natty, learning how to truly wrestle. That's the only knock you could have against her in AEW. And it's funny, a lot of people don't care for her now that used to care for her a lot when she was in AEW. When she decided to move somewhere, so they don't care for her anymore. But I've thought since the day she showed up in AEW TV, that is a freaking star right
Yeah.
there. And she just, and I think I said it on our podcast to Jay that um she belongs in the WWE, and it wasn't a knock against AEW. AEW, they wouldn't know what to do with her. And again, not a knock on AEW. She's perfect for the WWE system. She looks like $1 zillion.
Mm-hmm.
She's a beast as far as strength. I mean, I mean, just look at that moment where her and Bianca are staring at each other, holding the two women above their heads, right? I mean, that's like Hogan Andre.
Mm-hmm.
That's Warrior Hogan. That's WWE knows how to make those moments. She doesn't have to be a great wrestler. They'll make a moment with her, and that's exactly what they'll do. And they'll, excuse me, they'll promote her the right way too. So I'm glad that she went to WWE. Just like WWE doesn't know what to do with Cesaro. I'm glad he went to AEW, that kind of
Right.
thing, right? Certain people belong in certain organizations, right? So it's not a knock to say that she's perfectly made for the WWE. And, you know, it was worth the wait. She had a great showing at the Rumble, and there's going to be a money match in a couple of years of her and Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. That's going to just blow the roof off the place. And it's going to be another, like I say, Hogan Warrior situation at some point with those two. Um, Valhalla, don't worry about her. I mean, yeah, it's I tend to hate the word burying now because nobody's truly buried unless there's something like unless they're the Red Rooster. That's a
Yeah.
burial, right? But I
Yeah,
mean,
true.
Valhalla, would you rather you're going to remember that 2 minutes interaction she had with our truth as opposed to 15 minutes of her just standing in the corner of the rumble like doing forearms with somebody, right? Because she's not going to stand
True.
out that way. At least she had that moment, and that might lead to, I figure that'll lead to maybe Ivar taking on our truth, and it's gonna, you have layers with that. So unless it's like I say, it's the Red Rooster or Braun Strowman getting green paint dumped on him, but it's it's that's the beauty of the machine. All it takes
Yes.
is a couple of big wins and nobody's buried anymore, right? But yeah, other than that, yeah, I agree with you on those thoughts on the women's rumble. It's um I'm trying to think if there was anybody else that was interesting. I'm just looking at the list of people. Oh, Tiffany Stratton, another
Oh
person had a
yeah, I forgot about her. Yep.
great showing at the Rumble. I find it tough. I find it tough watching the women's rumbles and women's matches sometimes because I feel very uh bad because like it's anyways, that's another story. But it's just like I'm a married man and I feel like I'm insulting my wife by watching these matches sometimes.
Nah.
But aside from that, Tiffany Stratton, she looked
Well,
fantastic in that rumble, and that shot at the end they had of the four ladies that were sitting there looking at Bailey, that was good storytelling too.
um, watching the women wrestling, yeah, I don't feel bad. Now, if they were still doing the goofy bra and panties matches,
Mm.
then I'd be like, yeah, that I actually didn't watch. I actually stopped watching there for a little bit because of that. Because I mean, and I was single at the time, and I was like, I didn't, turn this on to watch those. But,
And
um,
that has a whole new meaning now after what's come out. Like it's got a whole
mhm.
new meaning for
Oh yeah, it
holy
goes back
holy
to what
God.
goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning.
Oh
I just hit my microphone. I
yeah,
hopefully I didn't make a lot of noise just then.
you're good. You're
All
good.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when then they moved on to the four-way match, and I will say this, and I've said this on the podcast before. I'm not a fan of the multiple people, the three ways, four ways, five ways, unless they are elimination matches, because to
Yes.
me, yeah, it's a way of, well, we're going to have them drop the title, but still protect them. I'm like, no, I mean, you drop the title. Yeah, you keep having the built in storyline. Well, I was never beat. Technically, you were because you didn't win your own title back.
Yeah.
But if they were doing elimination style, yes, I'd be all for that. Now, that one to me, makes sense because that way you can have the disqualifications, you can have the count outs, you can have, all that stuff instead of, well, there's no disqualification in this stead because, of course, when Solo Sokoa, he interfered and he did it just openly right there in front of the ref. And, and the match itself, a lot of action, but I really didn't see anything too special about it. I mean, now granted, we expected the four guys who were in it to have a lot of action, so that part wasn't disappointing. So it actually really met the expectations, but there was nothing that exceeded that.
Yeah. I will say my feeling on that four-way match. I thought it was a great match right up until Solo showed up.
Yeah,
And you know what?
I can go with that. Yep.
Again, I'm gonna give some props to Roman. No matter like going into the match, you're like, well, Roman's not gonna lose this match because they got to get to WrestleMania and do the Cody storyline and all this stuff, right?
Right.
Or the Rock if they're doing that. But then you're watching the match, you're like, holy crap, is he gonna lose the title in this match? He's doing like a great job of making you believe that. And then Solo shows up. And this is the one time I literally am watching the show and I'm like, all right, I've had enough of Solo showing up or Jimmy showing up or somebody showing up to uh to get the win. Like I mean, it's getting a little bit tiresome at this point. I mean, I know what they're going for and all that, and they're trying to give him hope, but they could have. He ended up getting the pin on AJ anyways. So what's it
Yep.
matter? They didn't need the Solo interference. They could have done so many different directions, and it would have been a phenomenal match. Sorry, the pun with AJ, but
Right.
But yeah, like I thought it was a really good match until that whole solo thing is like you're just sitting there going, not again, come on. Like again, I mean, on one side, you're making Romano to be this killer who's the best there is. On the other side, every single match you have that same interference. It's not even like something different. It's the same interference
They
every
pull
time.
the referee out.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just annoying at this point. So I think it wouldn't be half as bad if something different happened, like or somebody else came out or somebody tripped on a banana peel or whatever, right? But it's
Right.
just but anyway, so in the end that really brought the match down. But then they got it back because after Solo ran into the guardrail and all that stuff, they went back to what they were doing. And when Orton hit that RKO on him, it's like, oh my God, this is gonna happen, right? And um in the end, you get the wrong win, but yeah, it could have been better without that interference.
And one of the things that I guess kind of a aftermath of this, they once again showed AJ talking to the guys in I can't want to call them the Bullet Club, but now they're calling what the OC, the original
Yeah.
club or whatever. And they've been kind of pushing that too here recently. Like they're going to split, like he's going to split away from them. And
Hmm.
so they showed that, and it's like, okay, what's going on with AJ? Because I mean, I think AJ, I mean, well, like you said, the pun, I mean, he is a phenomenal wrestler,
Yeah.
So, um,
I was
you know,
so glad that he went back to the tights too. It's like those jeans weren't working on
yeah,
him. Like, especially they had like a flare bottom to them. I'm like, what the heck's going on with that? Right. But yeah, he kind of had the look of, remember when he came back and to TNA when he was up against Aces and Eights, he kind of went with that lone wolf type of look. And that's what it
right.
reminded me of. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he'll be. I mean, he's going to be great anyway. And I know he's also in his 40s, so but he could still win a world title, and it would be believable.
Yes.
Randy Orton's also like in his early 40s.
Yeah.
He could still win a world title, be believable. LA Knight, I mean, he's just the hottest thing since Sunburn right now. Everybody loves LA Knight,
I
so
think I think that's Logan Paul's opponent at WrestleMania is LA Knight.
you know what? Yeah, that would make sense. And I'd like to see that.
Hmm.
Speaking of Logan Paul, him and Kevin Owens, the match itself, I mean, that was another one that, I mean, I thought it was a good match. Logan Paul, I mean, everybody's now is saying he deserves, accolades because he's put forth the effort. He takes it seriously. He's not just in there trying to say, look, I'm the celebrity bringing good attention. No, he actually likes the wrestling business and he doesn't want to just crap all over it. And
Yeah.
so I'm still kind of on the fence about him holding the title, but at the same time, it does kind of push him a little bit more, even though, I mean, I think the wrestler should push the title, not the title push the wrestler, but for him, it does kind of work. The ending, when KO hit him, well, actually, oddly enough, I actually have a pair of these. When he hit him with the with the brass knuckles, I recently just found these again. Got them at a Renaissance fair back last fall. Um, yeah, but when he hit him with the brass knuckles, and I was like, oh wow, I was like, wait a minute, is he not going to take him off his head? And the referee went, whoop, there they are, boom, disqualified him. I'm like, that's actually not something that you see a lot. Normally, the referee would see the brass knuckles before they even started counting, and he stopped it. Kevin Owens like, no, no, no. But so they were able to bring the brass knuckles back in, into the story because that's how Logan Paul wanted to begin with.
Hmm.
Was with the brass knuckles, and of course, he's saying, no, I got the power of the punch. He's going back to the William Regal, Steve Regal, whichever name. I get him honestly. I can't remember which name he was using where anymore, but
It's William in WWE, Steve in WCW.
ah,
Yeah.
there you go. And the power of the punch, which actually him in real life, if he hits you, it probably would hurt quite a bit
Yeah.
because he's a legitimately tough guy.
Yeah.
Um, but I liked the ending. I was like, okay, it's interesting, and I liked it. And it kind of pushes it further. Kevin Owens, though, might be on the shelf. I don't know if you saw that news.
Yeah. Hmm.
He had a fractured foot
Yeah.
before the match, and he did all that. You would have never known,
Yeah.
So Kevin Owens, I mean, he's tough. I mean, he's like legitimately, a tough guy to be able to pull that off. I mean, he wasn't even limping or anything, and he's doing all that with a fractured foot.
Good
And
Canadian
so,
boy, right?
yeah, good Canadian boy who learned how to speak English by watching wrestling
Yeah,
videotapes.
yeah, exactly.
That is like one of the coolest stories I think I've ever heard. And big family man. A lot of people don't
Hmm.
realize about it because they just see the character. But his wrestling last name is Owens after his son, who was named after Owen Hart.
Yeah.
You know,
Have you
so
seen his son lately?
I have not
His son's a monster. Like
really.
he dwarfs Kevin Owens right now.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go check that out
Yeah,
once we're
yeah.
done.
I don't
So
know how tall Kevin Owens is, but he's got him by 4 to 6 inches. It's crazy.
no, well, my son
Yeah.
right now he's 13. He's getting close to that. I'm 6'1", and my wife's funny because my wife is just under 5'1", and so there's already a good height disparity between us. Um, my son, he's about 5'6", 5'7" already,
Hmm.
and he's only 13, so he's still got some growing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
now I do have to remind him, you want a shot at the title, come on. you know, but 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 yes, I mean I need to go check out the picture of Kevin Owens and his son.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, yeah. Speaking of the match itself, I love them putting a title on Logan Paul. I was one of the ones that watching that match in Saudi Arabia, I'm like, screw it, put the title on him, take it off Roman, put it on him, just for the press that would get, because that was such a good match. Again, another
Yeah.
one where people were expecting nothing, and that was a phenomenal match that they had. Um, yeah, I mean Logan Paul. I mean, I've been saying this. You got to give him props. That dude is a crazy. I don't personally like the guy outside of WWE and all the stuff he did,
Exactly. Yeah.
but as far as WWE, I love him in WWE because he now the only misstep that he took in WWE was starting off as a babyface. Other than that, he should have been a heel right from the get go and be self aware of the fact that you're not going to be liked. And now he's leaning into it. He's fantastic as a heel. It makes sense to put a championship on the guy.
It makes you hate
You
him
know,
even more.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you want the person to win the title from him. That's the point of a champion, a heel champion, right? And I don't know where that got lost in the old days, but yeah, at some point we're gonna have to get into the conversation. Like, is he one of the fastest to pick up on wrestling going? Like, I mean, right now I think the winner in that argument
Mm.
is Kurt Angle. I
Yeah.
think because Kurt Angle got not only the athleticism, but he also got the mic skills and he understood how to entertain. Well, Logan Paul's got both of those. He's a ridiculous athlete. I didn't realize he was that good of an athlete. And then of course he's great on the mic. So, I mean, I know he's not an Olympic wrestler, but he's a professional wrestler and he's doing a good job. But yeah,
How tall is he?
he looks like he's about 6'2" or something like that.
Yeah,
He's a
because
tall, lanky kind of guy, but he's still got a wrestler's
exactly.
build. Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
lankiness that which makes you think, okay, he's got to be tall because he's
mhm,
so daggone skinny.
yeah.
But I mean, and he's muscular. I mean, he's it's
He
not
is, yeah.
he doesn't have like Dwayne Johnson muscles,
No,
but
but he's shredded. He's shredded. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, he's
yeah,
probably got very single digit percentage body fat very
yeah.
easily.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
But he gets it, and that's all you
yeah,
ask for. You ask for
exactly.
somebody to
That's a
get it. That's it.
perfect point. If they
Yeah.
get it, then I'm all for it.
Exactly.
And
Kurt Angle got it.
got
He's
it.
like Kurt Angle. I remember when he first started, he's like, I can whip any of these guys. Then he's like, ding. Oh no, I get it. I get why I'm doing this, right?
Hmm.
Brock Lesnar got it eventually, right? That whole thing. That's what you do. So yeah, I and the fact that Kevin Owens wrestled that match with a fractured foot, I mean, that goes back to the Undertaker wrestling Hell in a Cell with a fractured foot, right?
Yep.
That kind of thing. But Owens is tough, man. Like I wasn't a big Owens fan when he first started, but I've grown to respect him immensely. I like him, and I just like that no nonsense character that he's got going on now and stuff like that. And the ending was very well done as far as the brass knuckles. The only thing I didn't like is, my God, they spent an inordinate amount of time with that guy holding the brass knuckles there, or uh he's one of his hanger-ons or something like that.
What
That took
Jeff or
forever.
Jason or Judy or
Oh,
I don't know.
that took forever. It's like I think Waller and Austin Theory were late for their spot or something like that. They pulled a Papa
That would
Shango
make
from
sense. Yeah.
WrestleMania 8, right?
Yeah.
But it took forever. But then the spot was great, and Owens having the brass knuckle still in his hand. You don't see that very often anymore. So yeah, I thought they were going to go with the whole it falls out of his armpit when he holds up
Right. Hold
there.
up. Oh, what's that? So,
But yeah,
um,
no, good stuff.
oh yeah, and then the men's rumble itself. You know, my first comment, and I actually post this, and I'm gonna have to invite you to this one wrestling board that I'm part of, this one group. As soon as they had, okay, Jay comes out, and then Jimmy comes out. You know, kind of reminiscent of the Hardy Boys back, whichever Rumble that was. And I just put on there worst twins ever, which of course, people, if you know the reference, you know, it's from the movie Euro Trip. You know, they had another reason why they were the worst twins ever, but I had to put worst twins ever. And you know, and I'm pretty sure, you know, they were probably enjoying the moment though, because, you know, the Hardy Boys and they eventually had their match against each other at WrestleMania. You know, that's a good moment for them growing up. And of course, with the Usos, you know, the Fatu family, which they're part of the Anawai family, they grew up in wrestling. So this was a good moment for them. And, you know, so that's the way it started out. But then some of the other things, what I noticed, and I don't know if you had a chance to listen to, excuse me, the last episode when I was talking about some of the stuff by the numbers as far as the Rumble.
Yep.
The first Australian men, which surprised me when I was looking at that doing the research. You know, they've had some Australian women. This is the first time they had Australian men, and they had two of them this time. The
It's a
first,
shame Outback Jack never got in the Royal
I know,
Rumble.
right? Him and his kangaroo, you know, boomerang clothesline that he did. You know, and honestly, when his song that Time He Kangaroo Down, I went, you know, back then I was like, there's got to be a way I can find this song. And actually, um, I saw I back then I actually happened to find it's like some music for the song Tie Me Kangaroo Down. And now, okay, now I'm about to go listen to that song after we're done. But yeah, oh, Outback Jack. Yeah. You know what? There's some nostalgia they need to bring back if he's still alive. So, but yeah, the first Australian, and they had two of them in there. The first German, which I was like, wait
Yep.
a minute, they've never had a German. Yeah, sure enough, first German. Um, and in this one there was eight second generation and Andrade third generation wrestlers. In this one, the women's one, Natalia. She was the only multi generation wrestler in that one, but there was eight in this one, which means a quarter of the men in here were second, you know, at least second generation wrestlers. I mean, that's I think that's kind of saying something. But
Well, and I got another fact for you. I don't know if you picked up on this, and I did when I was watching. The first, I'm just looking at the list now, the first seven wrestlers, and I noticed this when it was going on, none of them were American, or, you know, they were all, so you got, well, okay, Jay and Jimmy are American. They were born in San Francisco, but they're of Samoan lineage. You had
right,
Grayson Waller, who's from Australia. You had Andrade from Mexico, Carmelo Hayes. Oh, sorry. All right, sorry, I got this wrong. None of them were Caucasian American. Let's
oh,
put it that way. Yeah, all right, but I'm talking about you're seeing an ethnicity, like a cultural pot here. Like so, Jimmy and Jay, Grayson Waller from Australia, Andrade from Mexico, Carmelo Hayes, who's African American, Shinsuke Nakamura, and
yep.
then Santos Escobar. The first seven. So that's how many? That's the first 20 minutes of the Rumble. You didn't have like somebody that's
Someone that looked like
Caucasian.
us.
Well, no, it's not. I was impressed by that. I'm like,
Oh
holy
yeah, I mean,
God. Like I'm thinking like you think about the main event picture years ago and like, it was such a big deal for The Rock to be in the main event picture because he's the first like, African American champion or whatever, right? And it's like all of a sudden, like this is amazing like that we're seeing, this not just whether it's black, white, whatever, but all these different countries represented. Then you had Karrion
mhm.
Cross come in, so he's from the States, and then it's Dominic, right? Who's Hispanic
San
heritage.
Diego,
He's
but I
San
mean,
Diego, but
he's second generation,
yeah,
and he I know he did some stuff in was it AAA or
yeah,
the other company down there because I mean Dominic a bit. I mean, not a lot, obviously, but Dominic, who everybody loves to boo. By the way,
yeah,
I did hear those sounds because they pipe boos in for him, and
yeah.
he's
I
loving it.
know.
Dominic,
Yeah,
he's doing fantastic at playing that role.
yeah.
Um,
But you keep going down that list. Carlito he's
Puerto
from
Rico,
Puerto Rico. Bobby Lashley, African American. Ludwig Kaiser, who's German.
German,
Austin Theory, he's from Atlanta or whatever. Finn Balor, who's Irish.
Irish,
Cody, and then Bronson Reed's from, is it New
Australia.
Zealand? Is
No,
it Australia?
he's Australian. Yeah, he's the
Okay.
second Australian.
Kofi Kingston from no,
Ghana.
just joking.
Well, what happened to your accent?
Exactly, that's where I was going with. But then you had Gunther from Austria. Ivar is American, I
He's
believe.
American.
Yep.
Yeah, he's American.
Braun Breaker. Omos from Nigeria.
Nigeria. Yep.
Pat McAfee from the Moon.
Yeah.
JD McDonough's Irish.
Irish.
Our Truth's American. The Miz is American. Damian Priest is Puerto Rican
Yep.
by I think he's Puerto Rican American, but still.
Yeah, he was actually born. He's a New Yorican is,
Okay.
I guess the term for, yeah, because he's,
Yeah.
but I guess he lived in Puerto Rico for a little bit. He was born in New York, but but I mean, he claims Puerto Rico because, well, that's his lineage. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Go
And
for it.
then you had CM Punk, Ricochet, so both American, Drew McIntyre from Scotland, and
Yep.
Sami Zayn from Montreal. So is this the most culturally diverse Royal Rumble, men's Royal Rumble that they
You
ever
know what?
had? Like,
I will have to look because me being an Excel geek, and I pulled it up a couple episodes ago, and I actually did a screen share, and I was actually showing, Justin. He actually was a co-host in that one, and I pointed out this thing, different, stats that I was building this thing, and I'm still building it. And like I said, I'm an Excel geek. I'm always looking for a reason to work with it. Not only that, but it keeps my skills up while I'm job hunting. And I will have to go look and see. Um, I mean, it just might be. I mean, and I think that actually goes back to our early conversation where wrestling has become such a worldwide
yeah,
thing. So, I
yeah.
mean, to me, it's an accurate representation of what's really going on.
It
And
is, and it's a kudos to their scouting system,
mhm,
worldwide too. And I don't think you would have had. Again, this goes back to our conversation at the beginning of the show. Like it or hate it, what we have today in wrestling is because of what started with the WWF back in the
yep,
80s, right? Not that he started wrestling, but as far as making it this global phenomenon, you think about even back in the early 90s, you had Brett was a massive star in Kuwait. And you had them doing worldwide tours back in the early 90s and the new generation. This is what we get out of it. Like we have again, like the most culturally diverse rumble. So like 4 or 5 that you would call Caucasian Americans are in the Rumble, and the rest are from somewhere else, or they're African American or whatever, right? Or Samoan American. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. It's like, and that's everybody talks about representation and kids wanting to get into sports and stuff like that. Well, they see this stuff and it's like, yeah,
mm-hmm,
I can be Jay Uso, I can be Bobby Lashley, I can be Ludwig Kaiser or whatever, right? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And it's just, because that's one of the things WWE got accused of years ago, is just whitewashing everything. It's
yeah.
like, oh,
Well,
everybody's,
oh, it wasn't
yeah,
just WWE. I mean, Joel and I, we've actually done episodes on this. In fact, 2 years ago, we had a panel discussion with three black wrestlers. And in fact, it was supposed to be four. One of them couldn't make it. But so he actually came on the next weekend, as a continuation of it. But and these are younger guys. I mean, and I say younger, I mean they're younger than me and Dwaylen. Um, but they actually knew the history, and Dwaylen definitely knows the history of back in the day. And Kamala, James Harris, his real name, before he
yeah,
passed away, he was on Steve Austin's podcast, and he actually talked about, like, in the 60s, and obviously probably before that, because that's when, basically, I mean, if you weren't racist, something was probably, they thought something was wrong with you, which is really stupid, because to me, racism is stupid anyway. And they would only have one black wrestler in a territory. They might
yeah,
have two, depending. Oh, we need a tag team, you know. But besides that, because Kamala said when he showed up in Charlotte to work, for Crockett, somebody told him, "Well, wait a minute, we already have so and so here. You can't be
yeah,
here very long."
yeah,
And now, I mean, you look at it, and like you said, it is so diverse in there, and the matches were really good. And we didn't even talk about that with the women's rumble, because Natalia, is she considered Canadian or American?
no, she's Canadian, born
Is
in
she Canadian?
Calgary.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
mm-hmm.
that's what I wasn't sure about, because I know
Yeah,
Jim Neidhart. I mean, kind of they split time between two, so I wasn't sure where she was born. But
mhm.
let's see. I think there was another one who was from Canada. Was it Indy Hartwell?
No,
Is
she's
she
Australian.
Australian?
Yep. Tegan
There
Knox is like Australia or New Zealand or something like
Tegan
that.
Knox. Tegan Knox is Welsh. I do remember that one.
Chelsea Green's from Canada. She's from
That's the
Vancouver.
one. That's right.
By
That's
the
what I
way,
was.
another stand-up performance in the women's rumble was
Oh,
Chelsea
Chelsea
Green.
Green. Yes, I totally forgot about that. I mean, I
But
felt
yeah,
bad for her. I'm like, I almost felt like Millhouse. She's already dead.
yeah, like you had Piper Niven from Scotland, Xia Li from China, Zelina
Yes.
Vega's Puerto Rican. Is it Puerto Rican or forget?
She's another like a New Yorican because I mean I know you. I'm pretty sure you know about her dad.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
9/11, yeah.
Yep. So
Nia Jax has got the Samoan lineage.
yep.
I don't know what
You know,
Shotzi.
Shotzi. I just read this earlier. Real quick, Nia Jax. I didn't know this until today. She was born in Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay, there you
but
go.
she grew
Yeah,
up in Hawaii. But yeah, she was
yeah.
actually born in Australia.
Mhm. Get
Shotzi is from California.
California. Okay.
Yep.
Becky Lynch is
Irish.
Irish. Alba Fire is Scottish.
Which, by the way, I love the name Alba Fire. That
Yeah,
is that is like the most Scottish name ever. Because Alba means Scotland in the Scots Gaelic language, and then
mhm.
fire spelled with the Y. I lived in England for 6.5 years, and so I saw that spelling fire
Yeah,
and tire spelled with the Y, quite a
yeah.
bit. So, um,
Uh, Mishin, I hate calling her that. It's Mia Yim, but Mia
yeah.
Yim's it's Korean roots, I think, for Mia Yim, if I'm not mistaken.
Let
Uh,
me look. Um, well, I mean, she was born in Los Angeles, but um, her father's African American, her mother's Korean.
there you go.
So
Yeah, Roxanne Perez is American, but she's obviously got some Hispanic heritage. Um, who else is there?
oh, Shotzi, she's half Filipino, half Polish,
There you go. There you go. Yep.
and the other one it was Caden
Oh,
Carter. She is half African American, half Filipino, I believe is what I read.
you got Kyrie Sane, and you got
Jamaican and Filipino. Sorry,
there you go.
Kyrie Sane from Japan.
Asuka from Japan,
Japan.
Bianca Belair, African American. And that Bailey, technically, she's got Hispanic
Hmm.
heritage.
Yeah, her last name is Martinez. Her real last name.
Naomi, and there you go.
Hmm.
So I mean, again, like yeah, like so in both rumbles, you have like a huge mixture of of different ethnicities, cultures, countries, all that different things. So
Hmm.
that's crazy. Like this might be the most culturally diverse rumble in
I
history.
I will. You know what? I will have to verify. Because actually the thing I was working on, the last time I had worked on it before a couple of weeks ago was 2019. They didn't have the women until well, I think that year, but I'd already stopped um messing with it. So now I need to actually add the women in there as well.
Yeah,
Just so I can get all those stats because I'm just kind of a Excel nerd. I'm kind of a stat nerd. Those kind of things. Like it was um is actually a Canadian guy. I cannot not think of his name. He did a lot of documentaries about heavy metal. For the life of me, I could not remember his name. But he was an anthropologist, and he said anthropology is the study of cultures. And I'm like,
hmm
oh, that's really cool. I like that. And so ever since then, I've been calling myself an armchair anthropologist, kind of like armchair
yeah,
booking. But
yeah,
and so I mean, I just like that. And some people, when I was in the military, I mean, because I'd always talk to people and just find out about them because I'm like, I know about me. I can tell you everything about me. I want to know about you because, you know, I I like knowing about people, especially, when if they're not from the same place I am, especially if they're from a different country. I'm like, oh, I want to learn all about that. So to me, that to me is interesting. And
hmm
so um, but yeah, the men's rumble, I liked it. I did it to me, it wasn't as good as the women's. Um, and like I said, the first Australian, the first German, Pat McAfee coming in, I'm very like because there are so many other deserving people. It was a good it was a good comedy spot, but um now
it was a
we were
waste. It was a
yeah, I
waste.
mean it really was.
I
And
would have liked to seen Chad Gable in that spot.
boom, you're reading my mind right now
Yeah,
because if you looked at the Wikipedia page before the event started, of course they had the people who would announce themselves as going. Alpha Academy had actually announced that they were going to be in the Rumble.
hmm
And all of a sudden, it didn't occur to me after the Rumble ended. I was like, wait a minute, where was Gable and Otis and Tozawa? Yeah, he's the
Tozawa.
the
Yeah,
third member. Yeah,
hmm
it's like, what happened there, and didn't even have an explanation on Raw as to why they weren't in it, especially when they were actually advertised as being in it. And I get things like that have happened before because I actually watched a video a few hours ago. It was like 10 big names who were never in a Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Kamala one year, I think it was like the '94 Rumble. He was advertised as being in it, and then for whatever reason, he didn't compete in the Rumble, and Virgil actually took his place.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, huge difference there.
Huge difference.
So
Yeah.
yeah, um, the the Punk and Cody, the last 10 minutes, to me that was like, okay, they're having a match, just a
Yeah.
regular match.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, and I didn't realize it was Punk's first televised match since he came back to WWE.
Yeah. He had
Yeah,
the host show with Dominic, but other than that, yeah,
yeah. So, and he gets hurt right away,
I
which
know.
is, I don't want to laugh, but it's like, wow. And because when Dwaylen texted me a link and it said, since CM Punk returned to AEW, he's wrestled 16 matches, broken his foot, tore his triceps twice now, fought multiple executives and wrestlers, gotten fired from a company that did everything to try and not fire him. And, now he goes there and he immediately, of course, that's part of the thing, tearing his triceps. It's like, well, man, that kind of stinks, and
Mhm.
I'm not a huge CM Punk fan anyway. And it's more the person that the Phil Brooks behind CM Punk, because he does have that. It's all about me, me, me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I admit, yeah, he's got some skills in the ring. The GTS, I think, is kind of a finishing move. I like a lot of other ones a lot better. But what him and Cody did in there, I think that was designed to be kind of a preview of what they were going to be doing, or probably are still going to be doing eventually down the road. And it's kind of a, hey, look, this is kind of like Hogan and Warrior back in the 1990 Rumble. Same thing. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
oh, and
Yeah.
just showing what they could do. And but R-Truth once again is awesome. And him reaching out to get the tag, and then everybody just went with it. Dominic went with it, and I thought that was just great. And just put R-Truth in the Hall of Fame right now. By the way, and I know they already retired the 24/7 title. That's R-Truth's title.
Yeah. Yeah.
That really is. So put him in there with holding the 24/7 title, because R-Truth is just fun to watch. And like I said, he knows they're not going to put him in the world title picture, but he's a former world champion anyway.
Yeah.
So why not? So I mean, he's there to have good matches and there to be goofy. He's a comedy spot now, but he's so good at it. That, and he's originally from North Carolina, so I like him. Yeah, but then again, so was Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon and I were actually born in the same town, and I'm like, yeah.
Here's an ironic twist too. Vince McMahon and R-Truth are really good friends. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah, they
that's the
are.
other weird thing of all people, right? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. So, um, but yeah, the Braun Breaker, like you said, he was rumored to have been a replacement for Brock Lesnar.
If
So
he was, he made the most of it. I'll tell you
oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
Braun Breaker, another second generation guy.
Did you
So
did you hear they measured his speed off the ropes? He's like 23 miles per hour. It's like,
whew, I mean,
it's yeah,
imagine getting hit by somebody, first of all, who's cut like he is, going 20.
yeah,
I mean, that you'd be calling your insurance company going, look, this guy just ran into my car,
yeah,
and totaled it. Well, what kind of car was he in? No, he ran into my car and totaled it 23 miles an hour.
he's a
Uh,
Steiner, man. He's a
oh
Steiner. He's a
yeah.
stud. Yeah.
But
By the way, side note on Braun
yeah,
Breaker. I don't know if you do you follow NXT at all?
some,
So I'm okay.
not a lot.
Have you been at least keeping up on him and
Yeah, oh yeah. When he first
Baron Corbin?
debuted, I've heard that they have like a great team. Baron
They
Corbin,
have a
like,
fantastic team. Like they need to bring Corbin up with him, and that's how they
okay,
should do. They should start Breaker off instead of this whole being a singles guy, and then you get the whole Roman situation again. Oh, they're just pushing him because he's a Steiner, right? But have him break in. Like I know he's broken in now, but they should bring Corbin up too because they can have them go after the Judgment Day, the tag titles, whatever. They've been fantastic as a tag team, like just the interactions and stuff like that. And
right.
plus, Corbin's got a new lease on life. He looks like a beast again, which I
Oh,
like that too.
I was big on Corbin when he first was in the main roster.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was like, good look, because he had the long, you could tell it was turning into a skullet, and I'm all for
Yeah.
skullets because, well, that's what I have. And I was like, okay, he got a good move set. He looks good. He's the lone wolf.
Yeah.
But then, he kind of stepped on himself because he was doing stuff on social media, that he should have just backed off. So I guess he had some maturing to do, but
Hmm.
he's a legit athlete. He actually played at least semi-pro football. He played
He
college
played for the
football.
Cardinals. He played for Arizona Cardinals.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, so he is legit. They just put him
Yeah.
with some bad, you know, things. And but now I'm glad, like you said, he's got a new lease on life, and I'm glad to see it because I mean I think he's definitely earned it. He's worked at it. But we have seen some aftermath already because the very next night on Raw, and of course we're thinking, okay, Cody's already said he's going to challenge Roman. Well, Seth Rollins, he limps out and says, no, you need to challenge me. So basically the world champion made a challenge to a challenger and
Yeah.
said it needs to be me because, when he laid it out, okay, Bailey comes out, but before she can really say anything, Rhea Ripley's coming down. Nia Jax attacks Rhea Ripley from behind, and then she gets in there and tells Bailey, "You're not going to face her, at all." And now Bailey, oh, okay, I'll tell it next week, and so that's kind of throwing that. It's like, okay, well, is it going to be Rhea or is it going to be her friend in Damage? Of course, this may be a way of pushing that it's going to be, her stablemate in
Yeah.
Damage Control.
Yeah.
And which I mean, I think that's going to be a good match anyway, because I
Hmm.
think both those women can go. Then you got the added, anytime you have like the added drama, that's not the focus of the match, but the added bit of that, I think that's going to be a great match. Um, but the money match for the other title is right now, to me, and Dwayne even said this, it's Becky and Rhea right now. However, Rhea and Nia would be an interesting match, because Nia Jax, I mean, she's always been pushed as just larger than life because she's a little bit bigger.
Hmm.
She's not as big as what she appears because apparently she actually pads her suit, her like underneath. That's why, she doesn't wear these little skippy things because apparently she actually puts padding in there to make her look even bigger.
Really?
So yeah, I'd read that a long time ago. I mean, I don't know how true it is.
Well,
But
I'm going to say this about Nia. Like, her initial run, I was never a big fan of Nia. I thought she was lazy and I thought she was kind of coasting on the whole Rock relationship there.
right.
But I will say this, since she has come back, I have to give full props to Nia Jax. She, one, has been fantastic. And I guess that's the booking again. They're doing a great job of booking her as this
Yep.
monster heel. And she has put the work in to lose weight. And I know it's not
Mm-hmm.
all about weight, it's not all about that, but um, she was getting to a point where I was like, I'm worried about her health, like that kind of
Right.
thing, right? And it's going to be hard on her knees, it's going to be hard on her back, it's all this. Now she's you can tell she's putting the work in, she's losing weight, and now she looks like a legit beast in there, right? And it's kind of it's a tough thing. Either when you put weight on, you either got to go full bore and just become like King Kong Bundy, or you get in shape. Like it's kind of like when Gunther had that weight on, he wasn't like so big that he's a spectacle, but now when you see him when he's all cut up, now he's like, oh man, this guy's a beast, right? So, um, kudos to her. She's been great, and I think I don't know. Here's my thoughts. I think they go with her against Nia, her against Jade at WrestleMania, so you can have another moment of the body slam, that
Okay.
type of thing.
Oh, that would be kind of cool.
Or maybe it's like a tag match or something like that. But uh, I'm still not sold on, is it going to be Becky and Rhea? Like I think it's going to be
Hmm.
Bailey and Io, but is that like, I feel like Becky's not feeling like the man anymore. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
her main event status has kind of gone down. Rhea's proven that she is the man around there,
Oh,
right?
Rhea, yeah.
And we still have to get Rhea versus Bianca. And
That
that's the match I would like to see at WrestleMania is Rhea, Bianca. I know maybe they don't want to pull the trigger yet, but if you're losing Punk and you're losing, Seth and all this stuff, maybe it's time to pull the trigger on a few big name matches. And I would like to see I'd like to see Bianca, Rhea, and maybe this is your way to turn Rhea face. Because at the end they have a respect spot or something like
I
that.
think they're turning her face anyway.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because she just did her first Make-A-Wish.
Yeah. Hmm.
You usually don't have heels doing now. I mean, granted, if a kid wants, to meet somebody, they're not going to turn them down and say, well, no, they're a heel. You can't do that, but she just did her first Make-A-Wish,
Yeah.
and that's a huge deal,
Mhm.
so I have a feeling they might be turning her face anyway because it's one of the cases where she's too good to boo.
I
The
think you
fake,
get I think you
yeah,
get Nia and Rhea at Elimination Chamber, and then that sets up WrestleMania
that would,
for
yep,
whoever else, because obviously Nia's helping turn her face as well, right?
hmm,
With these
yeah,
attacks, but I would love to see Rhea and Bianca at Mania. I think that's a Haas match that you want to see with the women, right? They're not going to pull the trigger on Bianca Jade yet. They're going to give Jade lots of time to get you know
kind of
prepared for
let it
that.
simmer a little bit before it boils,
Yeah, I actually
so.
saw a picture online. Somebody put them together as a tag team with the tag belts. I'm like, oh my god, that would be pretty
I
amazing.
did.
Bianca
I
and
don't remember
Jade.
who posted it, but I did see that one.
Yeah,
I was
could
like,
you imagine them throwing the Kabuki Warriors around?
"Ooh, you know what? Y'all might as well just retire them belts now because nobody
Yeah.
else is going to win them." You
Hey, it's
know.
a storyline written in, and then all of a sudden they have a
Yep.
falling out like tag team partners do, and boom, there's your
Eh,
WrestleMania, right? But
Yep. And that's
yeah,
when you have a reason for the match.
yeah,
And one thing about Gunther also, because it's funny you mentioned him like losing weight because you were actually talking about that on the interview with the guys who wrote the book on Andre.
yeah,
Same thing. I was like, yeah, Gunther has kind of done that happening, and he looks leaner now.
mhm,
Of course, right now, no, he's not sleeping much because he also has a newborn at home,
yeah,
and we have kids. We know kids born, you're not sleeping for like the next year and a half at least.
yeah,
So, um, but I'm wondering about Gunther because I think as much as what I like seeing Gunther wrestle, and I know they have the history with him in the Rumble already, because last year, he started number one, went all the way to the very end, didn't win it, but now he has the record for longevity in a single Rumble. I don't include the Greatest Royal Rumble because, yeah, when you add that many more people, of course, you had that potential. But he now has the longevity record, and so they threw him back. They threw him back in and say, well, he might, and he would have been a legitimate person if he would have won the Rumble. I'd have been okay. Now it's going to be title versus title. In which I have a feeling with Gunther, his future, it might come to that anyway. I was so glad to see him finally take over the Honky Tonk Man that record because the Honky Tonk Man to me shouldn't have held it for that long anyway. But that's just me. Give it to him for a couple months at best, not as long as what he did. But now Gunther, I mean, like I said, he's very, very legit. But I'm just wondering, what are they going to do with him now? Um, because I could easily see him winning a world title and then relinquishing the Intercontinental title, like the way the Warrior did.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I got two schools of thoughts thought on that. Originally, I figured, okay, here we go. It's going to be Cody and Reigns, and Punk's win the Rumble, and he's going to take Seth on. And they were building that. It seemed pretty obvious, right? And then you have Gunther's got to defend the title. I know everybody was saying Brock Gunther. That's what they were talking about. I didn't really want to see that.
I
I
didn't
would,
either. Yeah,
I would have liked to seen Chad Gable actually finish the story for his thing with the Intercontinental because that's still out there that he promised that he
it
was going to win that
is.
title. I would have loved to seen Gable beat Gunther for the IC title, not to defeat Gunther. Just it's a great story, right? Now that we have Punk injured, that puts a whole new wrinkle. And I'm sorry, folks, Cody's not going to go against Seth. You don't have a champion begging,
Right.
that my title is more
Seth might
important.
not even wrestle anyway because
Yeah,
he has his own injury.
I think he will. I think he will. But I think what you do there, I think you're right. I think you put it on Gunther. I think you go Seth Gunther, put him over. He vacates the title. You can run with this still undefeated champion. Never been
Hmm.
because he did he not fake? No, he lost the NXT title to Ilya. Yeah. So, but he's undefeated, vacates the IC title, have a tournament. There you go, and maybe Gable wins it in that, right? Um, Crown him because you're going to have a babyface champion on the other side if Cody wins. So you need a heel champion, and man, what a better heel champion than Gunther as your champion. Let Seth go away for a while to recover. Then you have Drew feud with him because you have a built-in story with Drew, and then you got another guy who's got to finish the story at next WrestleMania is Punk, and you have Punk win the Royal Rumble and go against Cody at the next WrestleMania.
They also need Damian Priest to cash in at some point because time's running out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many different stories they could do right now. This may actually, it's probably a good problem where you have so many people you could put in there, who all deserve it because Damian Priest, I mean, he got the briefcase. They gave him the briefcase for a reason. But Damian Priest, I mean, he's for real. I mean, I love watching Damian Priest,
Yeah.
and, so, um, so that's everything about the Rumble and, what we think, is going to happen or what should happen here soon. But I do have to finish because I promised you a story.
Oh yes.
Yep. So this past 26th of January, it was Michael Hegstrand, also known as Road Warrior Hawk. It was his birthday. He would have been in his 60s, I believe, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so, but I told you, I was like, yeah, I got a story for you when you're on the show here in a couple of days. So, 1996, I was in the Air Force. I was stationed in Misawa Air Base, Japan, which is in northern Japan. It's the northern part of Honshu, not Sapporo, but or Hokkaido. Sorry, the island at the top, but the big island, the one that's kind of shaped like a banana. Misawa Air Base is up there, and I was flying back to North Carolina on leave. I was going to go visit my dad for a month. I'm in the Narita International Airport, and I'm sitting in the smoke area because at the time I smoked, and they had a section where you could smoke. And there was another American guy. He had sat there. He was also in the military, and we just sat there, just talking. And I mentioned to him, I said, it'd be kind of, kind of fun. I said, there's a lot of American wrestlers over, who wrestle in Japan, and so it'd be kind of cool if, all of a sudden somebody walked by. Wasn't even like 2 minutes later, here walks Animal, Hawk, and Dan Severn.
It's,
And I was like, oh my. I mean, and of course, my son's actually asked me, how did you recognize them? Were they wearing their face paint? I'm like, no, I had seen so many pictures of them in magazines without the face paint. And they always covered their heads with something, usually
yeah.
bandana, do rag, or a hat. Same
But
thing
they,
here.
as they say in the business, they pass the airport test. They still stand out no matter what. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
these two were Dan Severn's not a small guy either, but next to them, I mean, they were just massive. I mean, and you got to think, I mean, how they were just nothing but muscle.
Mhm.
So I told the guy, I was like, I want to go talk to him. Maybe I can get an autograph or something. And I see them where they're sitting. They're actually at the gate. They're on the same flight I am, because it was going Tokyo to Seattle, Seattle to Minneapolis, and then Minneapolis for me, Minneapolis to Raleigh. And as I'm walking up, and this is like right by the gate. This is not in a smoke area. This is right by the gate where you get on the plane. And Dan Severn wasn't flying, by the way. This is pre 9/11 when you could still accompany people. And Hawk pulls out a cigarette and he lights it up just right there, which shocked me, first of all, because I'd always read that they were, all about no drugs, whatever. You find out later on that was a huge lie when it came to Hawk. But he lights up a cigarette. And I was like, and the first words out of my mouth weren't, oh my God, you're the Road Warriors, me being sound like a total mark because all of 22 years old at the time. And first came in my mouth were, dude, you can't smoke here. And he didn't even look at me. He just, sat down. And he's like, are you airport security? I was like, no. He's like, well, I'll wait for them to tell me. And that was it. And I'm like, okay. And I just kind of walked away. And Dan Severn, he kind of looked at me, he kind of chuckled some. And actually, when I met Dan Severn and got his autograph on that belt back there, I wanted to tell him that story, see if he, he might remember it. But there was a couple of people behind me, so I was like, all right, I'm not going to waste his time. But the other guy, the guy, he was also in the military, and he starts laughing at me, and he's like, "Are just shaking his head, and what is wrong? What I'm like, this is the first thing that came out of my mouth, and then I got to thinking, I was like, wait a minute, they're from Minnesota. They have gyms, around Minneapolis area, which they did. They actually own some gyms there. I was like, I wonder, if they're going to be flying on that. And, sure enough, yeah, because when they, they flew first class because of course they did. because they had that kind of first class movement. By the way, Animal was wearing a WCW hat. This was not long after they had just gone back into WCW.
Right. Yeah.
And so like they get on and I get on. And by the way, side note, one of the best international flights I ever had, because even though they put me right dead smack in the middle, as soon as the plane take off, I realized there was nobody else in the big middle seats with me. So I puffed up all the armrests and I laid down. I just kind of threw the seatbelt over me. One of the best flights I've ever had. But I'm sort of thinking, all right, I wonder if they're flying a minute. And as soon as they get to the next gate and with the layover, I'm like, yep, there they are. so so I stayed behind them like the entire time we were in the Seattle airport. Because I'm like, yeah, I don't want him seeing me. Not that he'd necessarily remember this idiot, who 14 hours ago told him, he couldn't smoke. And, then I found out, of course, years later, Hawk has, he could have a hair trigger temper, and he was like
Hmm.
looking for fights. So yeah, he would have beat Steve up pretty bad. And, of course, I told other people that story. And my dad, when he dropped me off at the airport when I was flying back to Japan, he told me, now look, if you see any wrestler smoking a cigarette, just let them smoke, dummy. So, but yeah, that's the Hawk story, and of course, you find out later on that he literally turned his life around. He became a born again Christian and he took it seriously. So I don't know if you saw the Dark Side of the Ring on them, but I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, there was a lot of stuff I had never even read about. The whole thing in Australia. Yeah, he almost died. Yeah, that whole thing. But yeah, that's the Hawk story. About I almost got beat up by Hawk.
Hey, you got a story, right?
I know, right? I mean, not everybody can say that.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it could have been worse. You could have been like, "Can I have your autograph?" He's like, "No." Well, there's not much
No.
of a story there,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I have been choked out by Ming, but that was for a picture. I don't know if you saw that picture or not. I
I
have it
don't
on.
know if I've seen that one.
I have to, I'll have to send it to you. But I haven't. I actually changed my profile to that. It was at the last wrestling fan fest I went to. It was Ming and the Barbarian both. But Ming, when he was taking pictures, he would like have people in a chokehold.
Oh,
It's,
jeez.
yeah, and I actually asked him, I was like, "How many people have you choked out today?" He's like, "I think he told me he's like, oh, around 50 so far." I'm like, okay, so. Oh, but there you go. So, uh, but as a wrap to say, yeah, thank you so much, BC, for coming on. If you've not gone to YouTube, check out Wrestling with the 80s. It is a great, great channel. I love watching it, and I love listening to the audio podcast as well. That's actually how, because I think I found out about your podcast through Ted,
Hmm.
which is no longer the Hill Truth. Now it's Ted's takes on wrestling,
Yeah.
but he's
Hmm.
still Ted. He's still the Podfather. He's still gonna be dropping knowledge on everybody.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're a Buffalo Bills fan, of course. Another one of our favorites, Finisher Wrestling. They're from Buffalo,
Yeah. Hmm.
so they stand in solidarity with you when it comes to the Bills.
Yeah.
So another great podcast. Mentioned Jaded Wrestling.
Hmm.
I have listened to it before. I need to add it to my rotation, but listen to it some more because I have heard their show. I mean, it is really good.
Hmm.
There's like I was, and definitely give a shout out to Dwaylen. Because like I said, he's on a hiatus right now. Hopefully, he can come back soon. But at the same time, we always say family comes first.
Hmm.
So and we always stand by that. So do you have any last words for us, BC?
No, I just want to say, and sorry if I took up too much of your time there,
Oh
but
no,
like I
you're
say, I
fine.
can talk forever about wrestling. But yeah, thank you very much once again for having me on. This is a blast. I always enjoy getting to talk wrestling with you. It's we come from similar mindsets from it, so it's always fun to do that. Yeah, to the listeners out there, if you get a chance, pop on over to YouTube and go subscribe to Wrestling with the 80s, or just check out the videos and see if you like them. If you're an old school fan, it's right up your alley. And yeah, and best of luck to Dwaylen with everything going on. And if you ever need a tag team partner to tag back in for another match, let me know. I'm around and more than willing to help out.
Well, heck yeah. And if you ever need somebody to talk about some good old 80s wrestling, you know where to go. And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
but I'll go ahead and say goodbye for now. So thank you, BC, but to say good night and God bless.